Hello and welcome to Game Changer Live. We were created to inspire around positivity, coaching, mindset, and more. We go live every Wednesday because live means authentic and unedited content. So the people you see here talking are live talking to each other, just like you would meet us if you met us on the street. And that means that we can connect a little bit better with our audience. We go live every Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we bring on guests on the second and fourth Wednesday of each month. Our motto for this channel is Together We Inspire, because it's so much easier to get inspired when you have a team behind you. Today, our topic is about intentionally using creativity for transformation, and I'm joined by my friend and guest, Shauna Prince. Shauna is a leadership and creativity coach who supports visionary leaders in generating extraordinary impacts. And she uses intentional creativity, which is the topic of the show specifically, to inspire big transitions for her clients. Shauna's also served in my local chapter of the International Coaching Federation as our president for the past year, and I've really looked up to her as a leader. So, Shauna, I am so tremendously honored to have you on our show today.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, you heard my introduction for you, but I'm sure
Mhm.
you have a way of introducing your coaching and your specific work to your audience. So how would you describe your coaching in your business?
I love that question. I think, I started really as more of a leadership coach. And during my journey of my own self-development and personal development, what I've really discovered is I'm really an intentional creativity coach. And I love to coach leaders, especially women leaders, disruptors, the sort of people that are out there making changes in the world, to do things in a different way. And that requires people to use other than their left brain, like other than the strong thinking way of doing things. So that's been my journey, getting out of my head and into the rest of my system, my body, my gut, both my feminine power, and using intentional creativity tools has been a big practice for me. So now I use that with my clients as a way to integrate left and right brain, bringing their heart, their intuition, um, their spirituality, just to really be connected in and to find really creative solutions to what they want to create in their lives. So that's what I do.
Love
And
it.
it's also a lot of fun too.
Yeah, it does sound like fun. I know that I use art to relax sometimes, so that
Mhm.
can help me unwind. Um, and we're going to talk a little bit about what this intentional creativity looks like in a second. But before
Right.
we do, who really is listening today that's going to benefit the most from what you're going to talk about?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really great question because I think a lot of times people can sort of self-select them out of anything that's about like creativity or art because they stop and say, well, I'm not creative, I'm not good at art. So I want you to actually be curious, to be maybe more like that. Anyone that was like that 3 or 4 or 5-year-old that did an art piece and said, hey, look at my elephant. And someone said, that looks like a rock, like you're terrible at drawing. And then you self-selected out of art or out of creativity, you told yourself that you're not creative. I'm going to invite really all of you into this conversation to check in and go, like maybe if that was actually not true, maybe if I was actually a creative person, then what might be possible for me using my creativity? So, you could be a person that does consider yourself to be creative. Fantastic. Lovely to have you here. Someone that is wants to be creative, someone that wants to get into a flow state. We talk a lot about flow these days, from everyone to like from the military through organizations that are trying to come up with creative ideas and innovative ideas. So I really think it's actually a very broad topic. We're not talking about art here. We're really talking about using our other than conscious mind to come up with creative solutions.
One of the episodes that I've done in the past was about this emotion called ennui,
Hmm.
which I had this epiphany that ennui, which is this feeling that nothing is good enough, I can't get entertained, I'm stuck in a rut, I don't know what I want to do, but I don't want to do what I'm doing, feeling.
Yeah.
It's a depression, a type of depression.
Yeah.
but it's really specifically the opposite of flow. And the best way to get
Hmm.
out of ennui really is to engage in an activity that's going to inspire flow. Um,
Right.
and recently used watercolor to help myself get out.
Mm.
So I think that I can testify that that intentional creativity really can help us solve problems that our logical brain is just not equipped to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, that literally gives me goosebumps. Like, watercolor is a wonderful example because anyone that's ever touched some watercolor knows it's very hard to control it. Our left brain is like, I'm trying to draw this perfect flower, and then it's flowing out on the page, right? It's like uncontrollable. So it's a wonderful example of like being in the process, allowing it to flow, being curious what shows up. Really intentional creativity, to give it a little bit of a definition, is just doing something creative with an intention behind it. So if I want to create, I want to create some an insight into something or to shift my state of being, it's like I'm going to do this creative thing with this intention. And we're not trying to control it. We're really just being curious what shows up, like what shows up on that paper with your watercolor, once let go of the paint onto the page, seeing what arises.
Yeah. Yes, and sometimes purposefully just letting the watercolor kind of paint itself. Um,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, listen,
yes.
that's what
We
works
could
for
talk
me.
about it forever. Yes.
Right, we could talk about that's what works for me, but I know that it's different for everyone. I'm wondering if you can help us define other types other than watercolor of ways to have intentional creativity or be creative in an intentional way. And I understand that you have some examples to share with us.
I do. I did. I brought some show and tell because why not? I mean, here's one example in the background. This is the background of a painting that I'm doing right now. So it's the first layer. But a lot of what I do is using either drawing or writing or painting in different ways. So the way I actually got into this, gosh, quite a few years ago, I identify myself as an artist when I was in high school. But then I got into this very like sensible, like you can't do anything creative for your business, like for your future life, because it's not responsible, right? So I did a very responsible business degree, but I came across a creative technique called cosmic smash booking. Really, that's the name of it. And these are some examples of cosmic smash books. And these are literally composition books. And you can see here, like they've got art on them, they've got ribbons, they've got details. There are pages inside here where there's writing, where there is, like if anyone's ever done, like this is an example of a class that I ran, where we're looking at, we're putting little collages in there. If anyone's ever done vision boarding, this is a great way to do it. And see, all of these pages have writing underneath. So that's actually journaling underneath, and then writing or images that go on top.
Yeah.
And what I really loved about that was I wasn't really much of a journaler. Like I had this judgment, like I'm not a good journaler. And I love this process because you journaled and then you created on top of it. So that's an example of cosmic smash booking. And I decided to get certified in that because I just loved it so much as a tool to get into my unconscious, and to shift things. And I don't know if there are any perfectionists slash recovering perfectionists on the call.
Probably.
Uh, but you have permission. Like this is literally just like a $1, it's a composition book. I mean, literally runs the pages up. For people that's very stressful. It was for me at the beginning. And you get to be messy on these pages. Like you don't have to have a perfect, like for some people, like for me too, like seeing a blank piece of paper, a blank canvas is stressful. So having it be messed up already is great.
Yeah,
I
because we
think
can get real precious with our art.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because we want it to be good. We have this thought like creative stuff has to be good. Like someone would pay money for it. And it drives me insane, really, because it's so limits what we will do. Like I just do my creativity for my own learning, for my own pleasure. If someone else likes it, great. It's not about it looking good. This is the piece I'm just doing at the moment. And it was a class I was doing last week. and like it was like around spirit, like this forms of nothing in your body, moon cycles. So, like sometimes there are forms that show up on these, but it also can be very abstract. This is another one I'm working on right at the moment. I was doing a flow state Friday and Saturday night. I decided to stay in and just paint, and I painted for hours. And this is one that's showing up, and it's really about getting in touch with the senses. And so these are the first like two or three layers, and this will have many layers that go on the top. But who knows what it's going to look like? Maybe I'll post in your podcast site what the final thing looks like. But it's so joyful. And when I get into that and I go back and like I look at this picture, like as I was creating it, I didn't know what would show up. And then when I actually completed it, it made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
So
That's the
yeah,
thing about art is from its, subjective viewpoint from another person, it's about the connection of what it inspires for them, but it's also about what it inspires for you as an artist, right? So
yeah,
you can throw you're not just painting with the pigment, you're painting with your emotions, you're painting with your subconscious, you're painting with your conscious. And I love that. I think it's a great analogy.
yeah, absolutely. So it's very, for me, it's really very joyful, and I've learned a lot about myself in doing it. Um, and it's also interesting, like the pieces that I don't love, like the pieces that aren't beautiful, they're also a big learning, right? It's like, oh, like what is it about that's there to teach me, where I have that performance, or will someone else like it? Will someone else judge this as a crappy piece of art? And getting to be with like, this is for me, it's not for others. It can be very healing. And then we'll do an exercise a little bit later on, but sometimes we'll just do really simple actual drawings to elicit feelings or emotions or experiences. I was doing this with a client yesterday, and normally when I have a client try to draw something that they're experiencing, I'm also drawing at the same time. And it's always fascinating to see what shows up when they're not trying to explain something using just their left brain, using like their thinking mind,
Yeah.
and when they incorporate drawing or watercolor painting can be something else that we use like that, just on the fly, just to see what shows up.
I,
That's fascinating.
it reminds me of an educational event that I had gone to for ICF Oregon. It was about
Hmm.
Legos, using Legos
Oh
and
yeah, right.
and
Yeah.
he said, when he was presenting, he said that people put symbolism into specific things, and it doesn't matter what the symbolism is that other people would
Hmm.
put into it. What matters is what you put into it. So, like this
Hmm.
yellow brick on this one line here represents your your concern over what people think of you, for example.
Yes.
And
Yes.
how it's placed in the thing becomes more meaningful. It's specifically a way to touch into that intuitive side of yourself that's oftentimes
Yeah.
beyond words. It's hard to describe or explain with simple words.
Yeah. And if some of the people that are listening might have done things like NLP or using other sorts of techniques like that or hypnosis, it was interesting in a client yesterday, she was creating this visual where like there was a boat and all these people were on the boat. And I asked her to describe it more to me. And then I asked her to tell me about the colors in the picture. And it was all black and white and grayscale. And that was really, really actually very important to that particular situation. So if we're in NLP, we're thinking about like some modalities is one of the ideas, but the idea for those of us that haven't done work in that is think about the difference between a black and white picture and a color picture. I mean, there's times when black and white is beautiful. If it's something that that person is really wanted to create and have in a vibrant way, and it's black and white or it's grayscale, we can start to look at why is that? That how is that person's brain relating to that as this very dull, sort of lifeless, colorless situation? And can we start to bring some color to it so we could create a new version of that picture, or we could start to add color to that picture, and then it can start to actually shift how that person experiences it. It's absolutely magical.
I love that. I'm curious how you specifically got into this field. So it seems like it's first of all, I've not met a coach that specifically uses intentional creativity like this. I've met coaches who use play. I've met coaches who use
Hmm.
games, but this
Yeah.
is more free, and I'm just curious how you got into it specifically.
Yeah, I think um I st- I started to do it more for myself personally, like, during my probably 30s and into my early 40s, like the most creative thing I was doing was picking wall colors, even though picking throw rugs and in my house, and I really had switched off that creative part of me. And so I was feeling really a draw into it, and I found some teachers that were doing work in this area. Just started to do some workshops online, and just found like how it perfectly dovetailed in. I had been doing coaching. I've been in the personal leadership development space for more than 30 years, so this has been my jam for a long time. But I trained as a coach specifically in 2017 because I knew I wanted to shift careers and do this as a job. And I just wanted to have like more tools, more things that actually help me to feel more alive and to basically figure things out. For a lot of folks that are listening, if they're coaches, like it's not always really clear what kind of coach you want to be, what sort of clients you want to work with, what brings you most alive. And so as I was going through some, fairly intense things personally, my dad died, there's been a lot of sickness in my family, some of my own challenges. My job disappeared overnight. One of those periods, all those things that can happen. And I really just found like creativity as a tool for me was personally very healing and very helpful for me to create new insights. So I was embracing that. Hypnosis, I got certified as a hypnotist as I was finding that was very valuable. I had trained as an NLP practitioner in my early 20s and found that was very valuable. So a long way to sort of answer this question, but basically, I found that the tools personally helped me. And then because I love to teach, I love to facilitate, I love to share things that I find valuable. Um, I basically looked for opportunities to train. And my friend, facilitation trainer, Marley Williams, who's amazing, she's here in Portland as well, incredible speaker and facilitator. And she gave me an opportunity. She has been running for the last 5 years or so this summer camp for women called Camp Yes. And I had been sharing with her this, cosmic slips with me. I had just learned how to do this and done the certification training. And so I enrolled her in allowing me to teach this at Camp Yes, like 3 years ago. And I had just done the training. And I don't know about you, like when you just learn something, like I don't know, I like to be pretty perfect at it before I do it. And I just jumped in, and I think this is maybe part of the influence of doing that training. And I said, I'm going to teach this. And boy, oh boy, that escalated and advanced my learning very quickly because I knew I would be in person teaching this at this women's conference. And I had such an amazing experience teaching this to all these women. So we did it in class. And then over the 3 or 4 days that we were together, the people that didn't come to the class kept coming and saying, "Can I make one? Can I make a cosmic smash book too? Can I make one?" And like we had this is like me dying and going to heaven is like a 24/7 crafting room. And seeing all of these women that didn't think they were creative actually saying, "Wow, I created this amazing book. I love it. And now I can use this as a place to, express and find out things about myself and to like I've done very angry pages, I've done sad pages, I've done all kinds of things to ask questions. Like it's a bit of a portal for me to find out information for myself. But doing that, having that experience of the tangible, like what is it like for us to allow ourselves to be creative in a messy, imperfect way, and then to see what becomes available through that. Like it was such a tangible, like, this is great. You got to do this. And I also just had a blast doing it. So it just really catapulted me into using it with my clients in terms of doing workshops. I do pages sometimes with my one-on-one clients where we'll explore something and we'll create a page together. And then I'll just do sometimes more simple processes with my clients as they're doing one-on-one. But it's just unpacked all kinds of interesting things for me. So I'm a big fan of going towards joy and where there is passion and aliveness. And I feel extremely alive when I do this sort of creative work. So
Uh,
again, a long answer, but big shout out to Marley. Gotta love her for giving me that opportunity. I really appreciate it.
I think that you've also kind of broached my next question for you, and that is what's the impact of intentional creativity on your life? And so you've kind of talked about um, moments of inspiration, moments of being able to get into flow space or to help process what's going on for yourself. But what
Yeah,
if you, I guess maybe another way of phrasing this is if you met a different Shauna that didn't do intentional
yeah,
creativity, what are some
yeah.
of the differences between this Shauna who has and that Shauna who hasn't?
I'm just laughing. Um, when I was doing my coach training, they had us look at like what are some ways of being that we have that we don't tend to be able to do together. And for me, it was joy and leadership. Like I could be joyful, I could be leader, but I tended to be like a very serious leader, you know, serious, not so fun. And so I think I would have still been a lot more of that very serious leader. Like, I don't know, you haven't known me when I've not been sort of more of a fun leader, right?
Not at all.
But I was, yeah, I don't know, like it's interesting. But I used to be a lot more serious about all of this. And for me, when I started to bring that joy, like when I started to realize, and I did this also in a beautiful painting for myself where I had joy and leadership and I had them together in this big heart. It's big, it's a big picture. I started to bring that together. And so I think I would have been much more staying with my left brain side, less serious, I mean, more serious, less joy, less access to the rest of myself. Like, I don't know about many of your viewers, but something I found for many people, and not just women, is we can often kind of live from here up, pretty disconnected from the rest of ourselves. And there's an incredible amount of resources that don't live here, right? I love my brain. My brain is amazing and my left brain is amazing, but it was overused. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? I was missing out on right brain and also integration of my left and right brain.
yeah,
And then losing out on that heart connection. Like I have way more access to my heart now as a leader. I have way more access to my intuition. I have way more access to my feminine power, and there's an equivalent, I think, for men and for those of other genders, like into our own experience of our own
yeah.
power, and also more connection into what is greater than us, whatever that is for folks, into spirit or the divine or nature or whatever it is. So I think I was, unless I can do it on my own thing, that can be exhausting, right? And I see so many women, so many leaders out there, especially people that are disruptors and up to some big things, that are exhausted, that are burnt out, that don't have access to their passion. I've had some women clients of mine that are really amazing leaders, and all they have is their work and their family. They don't even remember what makes them happy anymore. They don't even remember what a hobby is that they liked to do. And that touches my heart, you know? So when we can start to like open the door to more support from our other resources, from those things outside of us, from other people, our lives get to shift in a really transformational way. Like, we're not talking about incremental change here, we're talking about transformational change. Like, I was working with a woman this morning who's an amazing leader and has had quite a bit of this, I've got to do it on my own sort of situation. And we created some spaciousness for her to be supported in her community, in what she's up to in the world. And just to see like like some of the weight of the world, to be able to leave her body and to create and like that ability to be supported in her amazing mission and vision in the world. Like that is why I do this stuff. That's where the magic is.
Uh, so we really have kind of covered how you use intentional creativity and why someone would want to use intentional creativity. But I imagine because this is about art and because art is subjective and because we feel shame and judgment from other people, that there are
Mhm.
some specific roadblocks to this type of coaching in particular that your clients have experienced and that you've had to work through with your clients. I guess I personally expect that self judgment really gets in the way of this process. How do you look at um, those roadblocks and overcoming them?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And the main thing that I experience for folks is like most of us, I haven't found that many people that don't have some traumatic experiences with our early like artist internally, like our little artist. So like if you look at little kids and you give them a chalkboard or pens and paper or chalk to go outside or whatever, like they're going to draw something, they're going to paint something, they're going to make a mess. I mean, they're going to finger paint, right? They're going to get all messy, it's going to get all over them, and they're going to have a blast, right? And there's an age where, I don't know, it's like a flip switches, and somehow adults expect that, yes, it's supposed to look like a horse or it's supposed to look like a dog. And maybe it's a little wacky. Maybe it has two legs or it has it's a little bit wild. I mean, I remember at that age, I used to love drawing mushrooms with little windows on them and little people in there. Oh my gosh, they're so cute. Were they a good looking mushroom? Probably not, not very realistic. But I was definitely encouraged. But for a lot of us, someone said, that's not very good, or you probably shouldn't take art class because that's not what you're good at, And so then we've started to equate art has to be good. Art has to be something that someone would pay for. You know what? It's such a it makes me really sad actually. And so I think a lot of this is like how do we basically reframe that message we heard as a little person or as someone maybe a teen or whatever it age was for you if you had that sort of experience to go, you know what if I'm an artist just because I do art? That was I did some hypnosis work and that was a story that came out of it for me as a reframe. I'm an artist because I do art. It just really opened something for me.
Love that.
Mm.
Let's let's transition real quick to some practical work for our audience. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm curious if you can share with us, actually, I know you can because you already talked about it. Um, can you share with us a simple exercise for our audience to help them explore creativity? And I'm reaching for
Yeah, absolutely.
supplies here.
Yes, absolutely. Please do. So the first thing I'm going to encourage us to do is like oftentimes when we're creating, we're trying to create from that left brain and trying to do something good. So this practice we're going to do, no one is grading you. There is no good, there's no getting it right. And we're just going to enjoy it and have fun. And with intentional creativity, again, we're just using our creative process with the intention of paying attention, being mindful, and seeing what just shows up for us. So we're going to do a process called metacognitive drawing. Metacognitive drawing. And essentially what that is, basically, we're using our pen and we're going to be putting it on the page and just watching as we're drawing. And we can have an inquiry in our mind as we're doing it, but we're not consciously leading the pen. We're not trying to create a pretty picture or anything. We're just letting it flow on our page. If people don't have pen and paper, they can just even use their finger in the air. So we're going to be doing that. We're just going to be curious to see what shows up. Before we're going to do that, though, I'm going to just encourage us to do a little, like a mini meditation here. And the idea behind this is that we can actually start to move the energy in our body. So when I was talking before about this kind of like I experienced it really as like the separation between my head and the rest of my body. Like, my body just carries my head around, like that's its job to going, oh wow, these resources in my body. And our hands, I mean, if we think about it, our hands are this incredible tool. Like I like to think of my hands as a sense, my skin as a sense. It's not just our eyes, our ears, or whatever. So we're going to do just a little exercise, and you can close your eyes if that feels comfortable. You can open your eyes. It's really nice to do this standing up. We're not going to do that today, but if you're at home, you can try that. And I just want you just to imagine for a minute, just as you're closing your eyes and just starting to notice your breath, just really paying attention to where your heart is. And just starting to feel that energy in your heart. And you can just do a little bit of a movement side to side if you like, a little bit like a figure eight. Sometimes it's helpful just to get connected to that energy in your heart. Maybe you want to imagine that as a ball of light. It could be a color if you feel like it. For me, it's showing up as a gold light here today. And then just starting to move that energy up into your head. Just sort of see it flowing up there into your head. And you can keep this little side to side figure eight sort of situation going on. If that's the way you want to move, you can also move your body and however that works for you. And then just taking that energy back down to your heart and back up to your head and just noticing that there's that connection happening between your head and your heart. And then moving that energy down into your gut. And seeing that light there, feeling the movement happening. If you're standing, you might want to sway your hips a little bit. Just trying to feel that connection between your intuition, your gut, and trusting your gut. And then back up through your heart, into your head, back down through your heart and into your gut. And then perhaps move into the bottom half of your body. Just feeling that energy going down through your legs, through your feet, where you hit the ground. Feeling that energy moving back up through your gut, your heart, your head, and all the way back down. Just imagine that energy actually expanding outside of you, so into the field around you, and feeling connection into that space, because we do actually expand beyond the skin suit that we're living in. So just feeling that energy all around you. Just noticing that flow of energy through your whole body, into the space outside of you, and back into your body. Just going to be quiet for about 5 seconds, just allow it to occur for you. And just back into the space here. Anything you noticed, Tam, doing that
Like I
little
was
meditation?
already doodling a little where my mind was going, so it was very freeing. Um,
Beautiful.
and there were certain images, like you had our thoughts kind of go to our mind for the first time from the heart up to the mind.
Mhm.
I've had this envision of like a flower that was also fireworks, and there were like explosions coming out, so it was pretty cool to
Wow, I love that. You might even want to create a drawing to represent that for yourself.
I might. Probably not for this exercise because it was a little bit
Not for
dark.
today, but maybe later. Because sometimes those images that come to mind, like there's something for us to noodle on. So, like just trusting that there's something message there for you. I
Yeah.
love it. So that's a great way. I mean, that little meditative process, really, you can do that before anything you're going to do that's creative or anything that might be a little bit stressful, where you want to have all of your systems on board. You can just be integrating your whole system. Like it's a really good tool. All right, so we're going to practice metacognitive drawing. Now, in this, we're just going to pick up any colored pen. You could do this with a normal pen. It doesn't really matter. Just trust that whatever color you pick is the one, or you could, sometimes I even do it with two, but I'm just going to do it with one. And so we're just going to tune in, Daniel, to an inquiry. And so I'm just going to pay attention to what's in the space right now. So the one that's coming up for me right now is there something that's happening in your life where it feels like a bit of a struggle, and you could use some creative insight into it? There's something that can come to mind for that.
Yes.
And you could put, the word struggle or something at the top. It doesn't really matter. But the thing we're going to do is, so we're just going to take our pen and we're literally going to put it on the page and just start drawing, keeping that inquiry in mind about that struggle, and just start moving your pen on the page. And as much as you can, just keeping on drawing. Don't let it up off the page. And we're just going to draw for like about a minute here and see what shows up. Remember to keep breathing. And if words show up, they can get added to the page too. Want to add another color? Like my brain wants to do that. Go for it. Taking the next like 20 seconds or so. Is there any words that want to get added? Is there another color? What else wants to be on this page right now? Hey, how are you doing over there?
Hey,
You want to tell me what you did? You mind?
I mean, I told myself I was going to be brave. I am having
Well,
to,
it's totally up to you. Like
like, no,
it's
I
a choose
will.
your own adventure.
So,
Ah,
I don't know that I can get it so that everyone can see, but um, there's this situation in my life where I feel like that we talked about ennui earlier. Like I have some ennui, but it only shows up when other people aren't around. And
mm,
there's something going on there that it's like when there's not someone to be entertained with, I'm incapable of being entertained. Um,
mm,
that's a very weird thing to experience for me. It's something that I've been really thinking a lot about lately. So I think that's what I had envisioned, but then the drawing, like the first color that I did was blue, was
mm-hmm,
swirly, and it made me think of water. And then
mm-hmm.
when I switched colors to fire, it immediately felt, or when I switched colors to red, I immediately started drawing differently, and it really looked like fire while I was drawing. So there
Mm.
was this elemental thing going on there that there's like two halves.
Oh, interesting. And I'm just kind of curious, like you had the fire underneath the water. Was that important? Like, did the fire interact with the water?
It's more like the fire's underneath the water, like it's a pond, and
Ah,
underneath the water is all of this energy, and I don't know.
mm, fantastic. So my encouragement for you might be to do another one of these, perhaps when this is done, and just be curious, like, what does fire make available for you?
Yeah,
And having a look at how what the next version of this picture might be. And you could do it on the same one, or you could create a separate one and see what shows up.
yeah, I like that.
Mm. Like it was interesting, like I told you when we started, like I had lit a candle in my space here, and one of my coaches really encouraged me, maybe 2 or 3 years ago when I worked with her to start to think about how do I bring the elements into the work that I'm doing. So I'll often bring water, I always have water in my space, bringing, fire, air, something with earth into the space. So the elements can be really powerful. So thank you for your courage and showing me as well too. I really appreciate that. This is what I created. It's kind of wacky, but it was really interesting. I started with the red. It was very swirly and squiggly, and I was thinking about a business thing. And then there was this big sort of black area, this big like blacked out area that felt there's a big dollar sign in the city that felt very sort of in the dark. And like there were these black patches that felt like missing information. Like who am I? I'm in the dark. what are the missing links? So it was really interesting just to go like, oh, that's so interesting. So with this, I might then draw a second one just to see like what might be some of these missing links, like what could be a connector. I can almost like in my thinking here, I actually just sort of felt like, I might actually start to on top of this page. What I was feeling right then was like this idea, I can't really see, but it was like if I start to bring a the image that's come to mind is that infinity sign. So this is sort of real time. This is what's actually happening in my system here. Is I'm starting to put this infinity sign over this. And I'm feeling that in my body, actually. Like I'm feeling this sort of sensation in my body. Now I've added this infinity sign. In my head, I had been thinking about like chain links of a chain link fence. Starting to realize like what if I connect into that infinite nature of myself, that infinite sign, it kind of feels like possibility, like, and it also just naturally there went over the part that's in the dark. So how might I look at that symbol and maybe explore that? So just a very quick example, but I would encourage anyone that works with people, and if they're starting to like bring up images like my client yesterday with the boat, like have your client like draw like a little boat and themselves on it and notice what colors are they picking. And it's not about doing good art, but in coaching, I find it's really helpful for people to visualize. Like I had a client this week that we had her take a concept out of her mind and then put it into a visual, and then she was really able to see it in a whole different way than she could rationally think it through. So it gave her access to something. And then we created a new visual that could replace that one that gave her access to something different and more of her power. So they can be stick figures. It's not about good art. I'm not trying to, be Leonardo here or anything. But it's just about like how do we start to incorporate those other than conscious thoughts into the space? Like I'm in a noodle on that infinity sign. And that could be even in meditation, like I'm going to bring that feeling into my body, like in a somatic way. I could be practicing that, with my hands or with art, to a piece. Maybe I'll put it onto that painting. You know, it's very cool stuff. It's very, very cool stuff.
Well, listen, Shauna, I feel like you and I could talk about
We can for
creativity
hours.
and intentionality all night long, but we
Mhm.
are over time. And I
Yes.
want to thank you so much for being part of the show. I do have a couple of follow-up questions for you. So if you could define everything that you've said so far in just a couple of sound bites, not easy to do, but what would it sound
Yeah.
like? What is the key takeaway you want people to leave with?
Mm. I would love people to practice using creativity in an intentional way to create more insight, more joy, more love, more passion, more flow in their lives. Give it a try. It is incredible.
Love that. I love that. And if people want to reach out, they want to learn more about you, about your coaching, and about what intentional creativity could help them unlock, how can they best reach out to you?
We can post my email address, and if you want to get on my mailing list, I do workshops, like public workshops that people can come to. Some are free, some are paid. So if you want to do cosmic smash booking or periodic classes, that's the way. Or if you'd love to do a discovery call for coaching or hypnosis or NLP, you can reach out to me at that same email address.
I want to thank you so much for being part of our show today, for presenting so much information for us, and for just being a lovely person. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I also want to
Thanks,
thank
Dan.
the audience for showing up, for watching the show. If you want to give back to this community, the best thing that you can do is to make sure you're subscribed to this content, that you like this specific video, and that you share it with someone that you feel would really benefit from that. Um, all of those things will help support the algorithm from naturally showing this to people who would like to hear more about it, and I would really appreciate it. I also would really love to hear about what inspired you the most about the show today. And if you want to leave that in the comments section, the comments will show up after the video is off air, and then you can just toss your comment in there. That's also where I'm going to toss Shauna's contact information if you want to talk to her. And tune in next week for more content that's inspirational about coaching, positivity, and mindset and more. I'll see you then Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. See ya.